are you ready for a blog, and kind of what is the purpose of a blog, and how you should set it up if you're interested in one. And I think what I find is for whatever reason, blogging is a very trendy thing. And most of you guys probably go to association meetings, you go to local chamber meetings, you go to all these things, and they usually have speakers or whatever. And most of the time, they talk about blogging, and they say, hey, look, you really need to blog. It's the thing to do, blah, blah, blah. And half the time, people come right back and they call me and say, hey, I have to have a blog. I was told I have to have a blog, and I need to have a blog. And I guess my point is most people really have no idea what the point of a blog is, how it works, what the strategy is, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm going to try to do today is just to try to clarify it. And I think that what happens in the world today is, the kind of nerdy technical side of things, sometimes it doesn't translate into the insurance industry. And that can be a problem, and that can be a waste of your time sometimes. So hopefully I'm kind of like the translator, and I can break it down into layman's terms. And you guys can decide if it's worth your time or not worth your time. But I think that's an important concept to sometimes understand. Hey, this makes sense from a nerdy technical standpoint, but does it make sense for what I focus on, the products and services I specialize in? And those are things that really only you guys can answer. So that being said, I think the first thing to really comprehend is what is really the point of a blog. And, in my opinion, the point of a blog is to really project yourself as a guru, as an expert. And if you're going to be successful with the blog and if you're going to use it, obviously you have to have some expertise in these subjects, and you have to have some passion about it as well. Because the reality is once you start blogging, consistency becomes really the #1 thing to be successful. You can't just post a blog today and forget about it for a year. That's a recipe for disaster, and there actually are negative effects of blogging that a lot of times people don't really understand. So, I think the first, question you have to ask yourself is do you actually have any ideas that are worth writing about? If the answer is, well, not really, I hate writing, blogging isn't for you. And, that doesn't mean you're not going to get to the next level. I don't agree with that at all. Some people blogs help, others, you don't need to do it. So that kind of takes us to the next question, which is what types of things do I actually have to write about? And again, as I said initially, a blog is for you to kind of project your expertise. And for whatever products you sell, you're hopeful that people are kind of searching for help. They're searching for that person that can take them to the next level and to help them efficiently with their issues. So when it comes to writing a blog, it doesn't necessarily have to be very long. It could be as simple as 8 sentences. But it really needs to be about like an idea that you have or a concept that you want to review. Maybe you have an opinion on something and you want to share that opinion. Like I said, maybe you want to review something. Maybe something has changed within the products you're selling. And you want to kind of say, hey, look, things have changed. Here's what I think is going to happen. Here's what I think you need to do to be ready for these changes. Or maybe you just want to tell a story. Hey, last week I went to the grocery store and this happened, whatever. But my point is they really should, this is the hard part about blogging. It needs to be creative. It needs to be real things. On a blog, you are not going to repost news. And unfortunately, that's what I see 85% of the people doing. They'll find an article on CNN.com, and they'll just copy the text and put it right in their blog. This actually will kill your search engine optimization. I know a lot of people, like I said, you go to these meetings and they tell you that you have to blog because it's going to help with SEO. There is some truth to that, but what they don't tell you is if you do it wrong, it will hurt your SEO. So it's kind of like, rolling the dice to some extent. So if you do have a blog, you absolutely do not want to be reposting other people's content. That's looked at as duplicate content. That's bad. Like I said, you don't want to be reposting other people's updates. And most importantly, you do not want to be soliciting products. That's a huge no-no. So I think when it comes to like being creative with these things, it's better to, like, again, have review your opinion. Maybe you have an idea on something. Maybe there is a news story that has occurred, and you're going to give your 2 cents on why you think, what your opinion is on it. That's all good. But you don't want to just be reposting other stuff that obviously you didn't write. Long story short, guys, anything that's quick and easy, like copying someone else's content that takes you 2 seconds, that's not going to get you results. To get results, you're going to have to put time into this and be creative and write a little bit. So that being said, how often do you need to be blogging? Well, in my opinion, the minimum is 1 month. Once a month. So you want to be posting at least 12 times a year, once a month. But you also can post a lot more. But if you do post, when people come to me and say, okay, I'm going to start blogging, how do I do this? I always say, look, you want to post once a month, and that's perfectly fine. Most people say, well, I want to post every day. And I say, well, that's a little bit, aggressive, because after a week, are you going to be burned out? Are you going to have things to write about? Are you going to have the time? You may not. So it's always better to kind of start off conservatively, once every week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. And whatever you do, you want to be consistent with it. You don't want it to become once every 6 months. One, that looks bad. People say, oh, this guy gives up. Or two, it actually does hurt your SEO. So I would probably stick with once a month for the first few months, and then maybe you go to twice a month. So let me kind of show you an example here. I think it's an interesting example. This is actually my sister's blog, and she is really into long-distance running. She just ran the Boston Marathon on Monday, I guess yesterday. And long story short, she's had this blog for about 1.5 years. She's very passionate about her training. She's run about 5 marathons in the last 3 years. And I understand it has nothing to do with products. It has nothing to do with selling anything. But it's all about the same concept. It's like, what is she posting about? And if you kind of go through her posts, she's telling stories. She's giving advice. She's reviewing different things. I can actually go down here and click on blog topics, and you can kind of see. Actually I'm in the wrong spot. But long story short, if you look at her blog topics, it's kind of like life lessons from dad, race recaps, run like a mother. She's giving different tips on what to eat, tips on stretching. So again, not posting some sort of article about the Boston Marathon, more of telling her stories, giving her opinions. And people actually do find her blog, and they actually do contact her, and then she connects with them. But they look at her as the running guru. So even though that has nothing to do with business, there's a lot to be learned about that. It's about projecting yourself to be the expert. And that's only going to be done by the content that you write. And I think the thing you should take away from today's webinar is think about, okay, what products do I sell? Okay, so I'm the expert in these products. What types of things would I write about to, one, make me look like the expert, but two, what is the competition actually doing, right? You have to think about what your competition is doing. So I guess my point is there very well could be a lot of products out there that it's just really hard to do, and it just doesn't make sense because the products are almost like commodities to some extent. So I think that that's the part you have to think about. Do I sell commodities, or are the things that I'm selling, are there a million variables that are very confusing, and that the consumer is out there constantly doing research on these things? And if they are doing research, then there's probably some value in having a blog and really coming up with some good articles that could be found and potentially could get you new clients. Now, the only other thing I didn't talk about was you really probably don't want to consider blogging until you've mastered social media. Because in my opinion, social media is kind of like, it's kind of like the middle school, high school of blogging. And blogging is kind of like college. You want to go through middle school and high school, learn the basics, and if you get good at it, then you go to the next level. In my opinion, social media is before blogging. You really should be successful. That means you should have at least 1,000 people following you on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter combined. If you have those 1,000 people following you, now you have a good base. Because when you do start the blog, how are people going to find the blog? Yes, you may get a few people through Google, but in general, you're going to want to market it. And again, my sister, she does an incredible job. And make no mistake, I do as well for my blog, for my business. You know, always marketing it out on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. That's how you get a lot of views. That's how you get shares, and that's really how you grow your traffic. If you don't have all that stuff in place initially, you're just not ready. And that's not a bad thing, but I'm just trying to explain that, you know, there is an order of operation. You don't want to waste your time writing all this good content when it's not even going to be seen. So keep that in mind. You really should be successful. You should have at least 1,000 distribution. You should be posting it all yourself. If you want to get started, my suggestion would be don't pay a dime. Google has an incredibly good platform. It's called Blogger.com. It's a Google, you know, it's like YouTube, very easy to use. It's what I use. WordPress as well is another. They have a free and a pay. All you need is the free platform. I would suggest that. I certainly can help you if you want to add it to your website. But again, I think it starts with really understanding what you're going to be posting. And that's where I see a lot of people go wrong. They get brainwashed that they have to have a blog, and then they immediately develop one. They have no strategy on what they should be writing, and they end up just going, finding articles, copying them, and putting them right in, and their SEO goes right down the tubes. And in the end, I think it looks bad. So, you know, there is a negative side to it that you want to consider. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful and gave you a little insight moving forward. As always, you know, next week we are going to talk a little bit more about LinkedIn's marketing tools, and we'll go from there. Talk to you soon.